You wouldn't believe it if I told you I slept with my best friend's mother, a woman almost 25 years older than me. My name's Josh. I'm 19, a freshman at a public university in a quiet eastern state. I grew up with Rachel, my neighbor, my classmate, my busmate. Somehow, we were inseparable from elementary school through high school. Not romantically, not even the kind of friends who texted late at night. But in the chaos of teenage relationships, Rachel was the one. Constant, who made me feel at peace. She was sweet, a little silly, and always remembered my birthday. Rachel was like an anchor in my life, though never its center. I used to go to her house a lot, at first for study sessions. Eventually, it just became habit. Her house was only a few blocks from mine. And every time I went, I was greeted by Lisa, Rachel's mother. Lisa lived with Rachel, in a small house with a flower-filled balcony and white curtains that fluttered gently in the wind. She was the kind of woman you'd glance at twice, not because she was young, but because she carried herself with quiet grace, like autumn lingering in the air, waiting to tell its story. She had divorced when Rachel was little, never remarried, and rarely left home unless necessary. I always called her Miss Lisa, half respectful, half familiar. She always smiled, poured me iced tea, or offered freshly baked cookies before disappearing, leaving Rachel and me to study. And then one day, everything shifted. I arrived earlier than usual. Rachel wasn't home yet. Lisa opened the door instead. She was in the kitchen, washing dishes, sunlight streaming through the window, turning her loosely tied hair into strands of gold. She wore a loose white shirt and cream slacks, her wrist glistening with droplets of soap. I caught myself staring. Strange, I thought. I've been here 100 times. Why does it feel different today? Maybe it was the way the light hit her. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was just because Rachel wasn't there. I thought Rachel was busy with her study group today, Lisa said, tilting her head. Yeah, I scratched my neck trying to sound casual. Came early to grab some test papers, thought. No one was home. Lisa smiled and stepped aside. Come in, Josh. I walked in, suddenly hyper-aware of her presence. That was the first time I noticed Lisa wasn't just Lisa, my best friend's mom. She was a woman. And somehow, the space between us no longer felt so defined. After that day, I began noticing things I had never paid attention to before. Lisa's presence lingered everywhere in Rachel's house, not loudly, but in subtle ways. The scent of laundry detergent on Rachel's handkerchief, soft jazz always playing in the living room, the iced tea placed exactly where I liked it without me asking. She even always had the cookie I usually bought from the cafe near school, without ever needing to ask what I wanted. One afternoon, Rachel was busy at the library and asked me to stop by to pick up a group document. Lisa answered the door. I waited outside as usual, but she said, "Come in, it's too hot out here." I hesitated. It was still a chilly April day, though the sun felt warm enough to stir something in my chest. Inside, the house was quiet, except for the ticking clock. Lisa poured water, her back turned, her pale gray sweater catching the sunlight just enough that I could see her silhouette through the thin fabric. My throat went dry. "Sit down, Josh. I just baked a butter cake," she said gently. I sat stiffly on the sofa, back straight, hands on my thighs as if touching anything would cross some invisible line. She placed the plate of cake on the table, then sat across from me. We didn't talk. The only sounds were the clock ticking and the wind brushing the curtains. But in that silence, I heard my heartbeat louder than anything. I don't know if Lisa noticed the way my eyes lingered when she bent to pour tea, or how I watched her hand trail along the chair as she stood. All I knew was that I felt different. Not exactly longing, but a deep, quiet curiosity, as if standing at the threshold of a room I'd never entered before. In the following weeks, I began seeing Rachel less. She texted me once, "I'm going to the gym. Mom's home if you come over, ask her." I told myself I went for group projects, for homework out of habit. But deep down, I knew I wanted to see Lisa. Her smile, her calm eyes that made me feel unsteady at night, lying in bed. I didn't picture Rachel anymore, or homework. It's just Lisa placing a cup of tea on the table, her soft gray sweater. The way her eyes seemed to see right through me without asking anything at all. Looking back, Lisa had always been there taking us on picnics, reminding me to wear a jacket when the weather changed. Quietly watching me devour a third slice of pizza at Rachel's birthday party. But back then, she was just background, like the window blinds that swayed in the breeze. It wasn't until now, as I'd grown older, that I finally saw her for who she was. Lisa wasn't ordinary. She wasn't young, but she had a kind of beauty that made you stop speaking just to look at her. Her face wasn't striking, but her eyes had depth. Her voice wasn't overly soft, but every word touched somewhere inside my chest. One evening, Rachel was at the gym, and I stopped by to pick up my laptop. Lisa sat curled up on the sofa, reading a thick book with a red velvet cover. "Rachel, told me you'd come by," she said without looking up. I hovered at the doorway. I'll just grab my stuff and go. Take your time. It's raining outside. Have some tea first." I sat across from her, listening to the soft patter of rain against the porch roof. The only sounds were the wind, rain, and the occasional flip of a page. She didn't say another word, yet I felt oddly at peace just watching her. Her brown hair, streaked with silver strands she never tried to hide, fell gently to her shoulders. Lisa didn't fight time. She carried it gracefully. I don't know when exactly I started falling for Lisa. All I knew was that when I looked at her, I no longer saw my best friend's mom. I saw a quiet, lonely woman, one who felt worth touching. From then on, I noticed everything. The silver ring she always wore on her right middle finger, the bottle of orange ginger essential oil in the kitchen, the old songs she played when Rachel wasn't home, when Rachel wasn't around. Lisa and I talked more about books, about old movies, about little things, like the smell of wood after rain, or how tea cooled faster in porcelain cups. We spoke, effortlessly, without trying. And that scared me one day. As I got up to leave, Lisa handed me a small bag of cookies. I made too many. Rachel doesn't like sweets. "Thank you," I said, nodding. She looked at me, hesitated, then softly said, "Josh, it's been a long time since I felt like someone in this house made me feel less lonely." My heart skipped. I stood there frozen, unsure how to respond. I scratched the back of my head and murmured, "I'm glad I came." From that moment, I couldn't look at her the same way again. I started waiting for Rachel to text me she wasn't home. I started dropping by for little excuses, borrowing books, returning a USB, picking up sketchbooks. One afternoon, I arrived when Rachel was out. Lisa was on the porch, cutting flowers, her thin gloves wet from watering plants. She turned when she heard my car, her eyes meeting mine with a calm, knowing smile as if she had expected me. I stepped out, trying to act casual, though every step felt heavier than usual. "I'll just grab Rachel's sketchbook. We have a group project due." My voice came out softer than I intended. Lisa nodded, put down the dining room table. "I'll be in the garden." Inside, the house felt different, quieter, softer, almost fragile, like a thin mist that would vanish with a breath. I found the sketchbook, but didn't leave right away. Instead, I stood by the window, watching Lisa outside. She was pruning lavender, the late sunlight turning her shoulders too. Gold, her brown hair, tied loosely, caught in the breeze, a few strands brushing her cheek, and for the first time, I admitted to myself I wanted hair. It wasn't just physical attraction. It was the feeling of being pulled into a deep soul, a woman who had lived so quietly for so long that the space around her had become fragile. I don't know if Lisa noticed, but I knew very well there was something between us that I couldn't name, but that had begun to grow quietly and meaningfully. Another time when I was fixing the window latch for Lisa brought me a glass of Oflamade. She stood behind me for a long moment before setting the glass down on the table. "I appreciate you stopping Beto." Help. Her voice was low and slow. It was unclear whether she was speaking to me or simply letting it out into the air. Turned around, her eyes stopped on my wrist, where there was a small bandage from yesterday's accident. "Are you hurt?" I nodded. "It's okay. It's just a little." Lisa reached out and gently touched the bandage. Her fingers were colder than I thought, but the concern was so hot it choked me. I held my gaze for a beat longer than necessary. She didn't pull her hand away right away. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because the gesture was too big, but because I started dreaming about that hand on my desk, holding my beating heart still. Oh. If there's one afternoon that I'll always remember, it's that one, not because they oft big things, but because it started. With the smallest things, a text message, a faucet, a nightgown. It was Friday. The sun was shining, not too bright. Spring was in its midterms. The trees were starting to green again. The sky was high and clear as a thin layer of glass. Rockel texted me. Around noon, I have a long lab this afternoon. Can you come by and pick up my workbook? My mom's home had tipped okay and sent it without thinking much about it. At the time, I just felt relieved, not because I was asked to help, but because Lisa would be. Home I arrive at errand, 4 p.m. The sunlight slanted through the trees on both sides of the street, casting golden streaks on the sidewalk. Rachel's house was quiet. The olive green door was open as usual. A walked up the steps and knocked. Lightly, Lisa's voice came from inside. The house, the door's unlocked. Josh, come in. I pushed the door open and entered. The familiar scent of orange peel oil still hung in the air. Sunlight filtered through the white curtains and fell on the wooden floor. And then I saw her. Lisa stood at the end of the hallway, holding a towel to dry her hair, wearing a thin silvery silk nightgown that fell just above her knees. The light reflected off the fabric, making her body appear as if it were a mist, soft and almost transparent. West stood still for a few seconds. Neither of us said anything. I was about to turn away, but Lisa spoke first. I just washed me hair, sorry. Didn't have time to change. Her voice was low, not embarrassed at all, just a little surprised. Was flustered. It's okay, I just stopped. Beto, get Rachel's notebook. Lisa nodded slightly and pointed to the kitchen, but be the way. Josh, can I ask you a favor? I looked at her. What is it? The faucet in the bathroom is loose. I can't tighten it. Can you help me check? I followed her. Upstairs, each step on the wooden steps creaked slightly. My heart was pounding, not because I was scared, but because I didn't understand what was happening inside me. The small bathroom was bright, thanks to the window that let in the sunlight. The faucet on the sink was dripping. Lisa pointed. It's loose, Hurricane. You help me tighten it. I bent down to check. Lisa was standing behind me, very close. I don't know how hard it earned. I only remember there was a click sound, and then the faucet turned on. Water sprang straight at me. I backed away lightly, hitting the wall. Lisa was startled. Oh my God. Water splashed in less than 3 seconds. Both of us were soaked. The thin nightgown pressed against her body, revealing every line off her body. I turned away immediately. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Lisa didn't answer. She was trying to turn the water back on. I ran to turn off the main faucet. The bathroom was filled with a damp smell, with the late light coming through the window, and with a long silence, as if we were both trying to catch our breath. When I turned around, I saw Lisa standing in front of the mirror. Her wet hair hung down to her shoulders. Her nightgown was soaked, hugging her body like a second skin. Every curve raised, exposed like an unspoken confession. She turned back to look at me. That looked no longer confused, only tiredness, and something very real, very human. Can you use me a towel from the bedroom? I walked into Lisa's bedroom. The window was slightly open, and the afternoon breeze blew in like a breath. A smoky blue silk blanket covered the bed. The corner off the dressing table was neat, and the small bottle of perfume was still in its original place. Everything was quiet, a little lonely, and very feminine. I took the large towel from the chair. When I turned around, I stopped Lisa was standing in the middle of the hallway, her hair dripping water onto her shoulders. She reached out and took Thedawell. No one said anything. I felt my hand tremble as the towel touched her. Lisa placed the towel on her shoulder, then smiled slightly, a tired, acceptant Jeffness's smile. I'm sorry for making you so wet. Her voice seemed to touch ascertain chord inside me. I shook my head. It's okay, it's just I feel like I'm bothering you too much. Lisa looked at me for a long time. There was no reproach. In thought, looked no surprise, just a gentle sadness, as if she was used to people coming into her life and then quietly leaving. I stood there, wet from head to toe. My t-shirt stuck to my back, my hair dripping onto the wooden floor. The wind blew through my shirt, cold, but inside I was getting hotter by the second. Do you have any clothes I can change into? I asked, my voice half as soft as a whisper. As a whisper, Lisa nodded. She walked into the room, took out a white cotton shirt, and handed it to me. Your ex-husband's. It should feed. He took it, then turned away. I was about to go into the bathroom to change, but then stopped because I knew if I went in, They'd put on a shirt, dried myself, left. This house, everything would still. Be safe, it was still the same. It was still Josh, Rachel's friend. It was still Lisa, me best friend's mother, but I also know I don't want to go back to the way it was. I turned around. Lisa was still standing there, her hands gently squeezing the edge of the towel. Are you cold? She asked, almost whispering, and nodded, not looking into her eyes. Lisa approached. The distance between us was no longer a room, there was only breath and heartbeat. She raised her hand gently, wiping the remaining tear from my cheek with her fingertips. I didn't step back, I didn't avoid it. I just closed my eyes a very short moment, but it lasted like a beat of life. Then I opened my eyes. And Lisa was standing very close. She looked at me, her eyes gentle, but sincere as if asking, "Are you sure?" And I, with my eyes, answered, "Yes, I'm sure." I leaned down. The kiss came without haste, without demanding. It was like something that had been written, just waiting for time to happen. It was not like the kisses I had had. There was no rush of youth, no shaky hands, clumsy lips, just slow, warm, and real. When our lips parted, Lisa let out a soft breath. She rested her forehead on my shoulder, saying nothing. I wrapped my arms around her, not like a woman 20 years older than me, but like someone who had not been truly hugged in too long. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both understood we had just crossed a line, and neither of us would ever go back to the way we were before. I don't know why I kissed her that day, or rather, I don't know why I waited until that day to kiss her. Lisa, the woman I once thought was just a shadow in my best friend's house that day, became a new chapter that I couldn't stop. That night, I came home in the loose white shirt Lisa had given me. My hair was still dampened. The smell of fabric softener on the towel still lingered on my collar. I walked into my room, closing the door quietly, as if I was afraid someone would hear my heartbeat. Then I sat on the edge of the bed. Silence. I tried not to remember the kiss. I tried not to think about the feeling of her arms around my arm, and trembling like an emotion she'd been trying to hide for years. It tried to forget the way she whispered when our lips touched, "Are you sure?" I sat there for hours. No lights on, no phone, only one sentence kept repeating in my head. What did I do? I was Rachel's best friend. I was the son who Lisa often cooked for, poured tea for, treated like family. I was not allowed to cross that line. But then another thought crept in, very small, very faint but clear. But if it's false, why does it feel so true? The next day, I didn't go to Rachel's house. I made an excuse that I was busy, and then the next day, I was busy again. A week passed. I still didn't go back, but every time I passed that neighborhood on my way home, my heart skipped a beat, as if something had been left behind the olive green gate on Saturday night. I got a text from Lisa, not from Rachel. Just a simple line: "I left my sketchbook here. Stop by if you want." I stared at the text for a long time. I knew I hadn't left on anything, but I also knew I wanted to go back. I got to Rachel's house around 5 o'clock p.m. It was cloudy, not as sunny as the day before. The wind was stronger. The maple tree in front of the house swayed as if calling. The door opened. Lisa stood there. She was wearing a caramel-colored sweater and dark pants. Her hair was loose and wavy. "You came faster than I thought." Her voice carried no obvious emotion, but her eyes were different, a mixture of anticipation and caution. "You walked into the house. Everything was the same, but the atmosphere between us was different. There was no explanation. No one mentioned what had happened, but the silence was longer than ever." Lisa poured me tea and sat down on the chair across from me. She held the cup in her hand, but didn't drink. We talked about the weather, about the upcoming exam, about Rachel registering for a new course. Everything was so normal, it was unbearable. I let out a sentence like an exhalation that day. "I'm sorry." Lisa put down her cup after you and looked up for what I was confused for screwing things up. She smiled very faintly, a tired, accepting smile. "I didn't screw things up. Things were already screwed up." I stood up. I didn't know why. Maybe to leave, maybe tog it away. But as I passed her, Lisa put her hand on my wrist very gently, and for the second time, I couldn't stop. Her hand touched my wrist very lightly, not holding, not pulling, just a touch, as if asking, "Are you sure this time you won't run away again?" And I stood still, wet, and looked at each other for long. Neither of us said a word. Lisa let go. She turned around, walked slowly up the stairs, not looking back. I watched her back, and then I followed Lisa's bedroom. was the same as last time alight. Scent of orange essential oil, the curtains fluttering in the wind, she stood with her back to me, took off her thin sweater, and hung it on a hook. The gesture was very slow, not shy, not hiding, just a woman who was too used to emptiness allowing herself to be close again. I walked up behind her, not touching, just standing close. Lisa turned around. We faced each other without covering, up without saying a word of apology, without making excuses for what was about to happen. She touched my cheek. That look was no longer a look, but a deep silence containing a lifetime of waiting. I don't remember who kissed first. I just remember this time. There was no hesitation, no more avoidance, just two people leaning against each other to fill the empty spaces. In their hearts, that neither of them would say Lisa's body was soft, not perfect like the young girls I had known, but warm and suffocating. When I ran my hand down her spine, I felt her skin was a little cold, but her hand on my heart, it was hot. We wrapped around each other slowly, almost silently, just breathing, the sound of two souls colliding. Not because of passion, but because of being alone for so long. We lay next to each other after that, saying nothing. She rested her head on Miss Holder. Eyes closed, her hand was still holding mine lightly, but enough for me to know she didn't want to let go. I stared at the ceiling, empty and full. At the same time, there was no joy like a victory, no fire like a conquest. Only one sentence rang in my head like a distant echo. I just lost something, and I don't know if I can get it back. I put my shirt back on as it began to get dark. Lisa sat on the edge of the bed, her back to mesh, didn't speak. Nor did she make me stay only when I was about to walk outdoor. Did she call softly, "Josh?" I stopped, turned my head. Lisa didn't look at me. She just said, "This can't happen again, do you understand?" I didn't answer, just nodded and walked out of the house. After that first time, I didn't go back to Lisa's house right away, it told Rachel. I was busy, that I had to work overtime at the library, that I was tired. I wasn't a very good liar, but Rachel believed me too much. I thought I would stop. I really wanted to stop. Yet inside, something was still unfinished. A few days later, I went back. No invitational text. I went out of habit. I stood in front of the familiar olive door, and Lisa was there. She opened the door before I could knock. "You came just in time for the tea to be made," she spoke. Asif, I were still Rachel's old friend Josh. We didn't talk about the day before. No one asked what happened today. There was just a silence that was growing between us, a kind of gentle complicity. One that no one would name. I don't remember exactly how we started the second time. Maybe it was when Lisa poured me tea and her hand brushed my wrist. Maybe it was when I stood behind her in the kitchen, close enough to hear my heart pounding. Maybe it was when Lisa looked at me, not speaking, but her eyes like an apology that never needed to be said. The second time came more gently, less confused, more sighs, and the third time, it was obvious. Weren't in love. We didn't say sweet words. We just came to each other when the space in each other's hearts started to grow cold. Usually in the afternoon when Rachel was at school or out of town, he'd stop by to pick up something, return a book, borrow a hard drive, any reason small enough to make me walk through a thought door again, and then no reason at all. We got used to not having to speak, get used to the blue, a silk blanket, get used to the way Lisa unclipped her hair before lying down, get used to the way I put my jacket on the chair without asking, "Is it okay?" Once while we were lying next to each other, Lisa asked, "Have you ever loved anyone?" I was silent for a moment. "Yes, but not like this." "What is this?" I turned to look at her. "It's not like love, but it's not like not loving either." Lisa smiled, nodding slightly. "Yeah, I think so too. There's no definition between Lisa and me. It's not love, but it can't be called playing around either. We're just holding on to each other so we don't drift away." In the days that followed, Lisa and I saw each other more often, but we never named what was happening between us. No promises, no expectations, just quiet comings and goings. One day, I just sat on the sofa with her, listening to an old song. Another day, Lisa stood cooking dinner while I fixed a short electrical outlet in the kitchen. No one mentioned what we were, because we both knew if we called, everything would probably fall apart. I started avoiding Rachel, not because I hated her, but Beck couldn't look her in the eye when I was holding such a big secret. One time, she called me 3 times about an urgent group assignment, and I didn't answer, not because I didn't see her, because I was in bed with her mother. It was the first time I actually felt bad, not morally guilty, but guilty of betraying a trust, even though no one Had Giovanni any responsibility? Lisa seemed to sense it to one evening. As we lay side by side, she spoke softly and sadly. Josh, this can't go on forever, you know? I stared at the ceiling, silent. She continued, her voice breaking, not because I don't want to, but because one day Rachel will find out, and then you'll regret it. I turned around about to say something, but I didn't say anything because I knew she was right, but I also knew something else. I couldn't stop. There was something about Lisa that pulled me back every time. I tried to leave, partly because she made me feel needed, partly because with her I didn't have to prove anything. I didn't have to be strong. I didn't have to be happy. He just had to be real, and Lisa accepted me as I was. I wasn't as carefree as Edie Benet, though I started to jump every time I heard the sound of the door locking. Every time the phone rang at Lisa's house, my heart skipped a beat. We became more reserved. We always checked to see if Rachel was home once. Lisa almost accidentally texted Rachel instead of me, Goose. A single line, "Are you coming this afternoon?" And she deleted it, her hand shaking like they were holding a time bomb. Something was slipping away from us, but strangely neither of us wanted toehold on. We were just delaying the end, like people who know the collision is coming but still drive with our eyes closed just because we don't want to stop in the middle of the road. Rachel was the first girl I was close tout out, feeling the need to try. We shared a desk since 10th grade. I remember the first time she asked to borrow a pen, then a biology book, then the habit of tapping her pen on the edge of the desk whenever she was bored. Gradually, no one mentioned the question, "Are we close?" because it was subvious. We studied together, ate lunch together, sometimes did group work together. I often went to her house to review or watch movies on weekends. Sometimes Rachel fell asleep on the sofa, and I covered her with a blanket. Samams. She texted in the middle of the night just to ask, "Do you think my cat is depressed?" And I replied reflexively. All of that I considered pure friendship, but now looking back, I realize it turns out I was the one who never asked, "Is it pure with Rachel?" She never said it, never showed that she needed me the way a girl who secretly liked her friend would. Rachel didn't fight, didn't sulk, didn't send ambiguous messages. She was just there, always. Theon, who remembered my exam days, always the one who sent short greetings before presentations, always the one who knew I had preferred chicken sandwiches to beef, and always the one who laughed out loud when I pretended to be serious. I used to think it was attachment without strings, but it was actually attachment. It just wasn't sophisticated enough to see a tone time. I had a high fever, my eyes were blurry, my body was tired. I didn't feel like eating. Rachel was the one who cooked porridge, brought it to my house, and sat there waiting for me to finish eating. I remember her peeling off each pill and telling me, "Take this after eating. This pill will help lower your fever quickly." I fell asleep while she was still sitting on the wooden chair near the bed. When I woke up, she was back, leaving a note. "Remember to eat enough next time. Don't make me cook." Porridge again. I laughed when I read it, but I never thought much about that action. Now that I think about it, I realize Rachel never asked for anything, but Alice gave. I never thought she could love me. Maybe because I was too stupid. Rebecca's. I was so used to having her around that I took it for granted. But feelings, if not seen, gradually became scratches. I noticed that recently Rachel often looked at me longer when I was absent-minded. Her eyes were no longer as innocent as before. Something had changed, but I was so absorbed in another woman at that time that I forgot about the girl who was silently loving me without ever saying anything. I started remembering every little detail. Things that I used to take for granted now took on a new meaning every time Rachel stayed silent when I told her about another girl. Every time she cooked my favorite dish without asking, every time I was late, she waited for me, not angry. They were all signs, but I ignored them. I remember one time we went shopping for shirts at the mall. Rachel picked up a black t-shirt, held it in front of me, and said, "This looks good on you." I tried it on, then bought it without thinking. But that day, when I jokingly asked if I had a girlfriend, "Do you think she would like me to dress like this?" Rachel just smiled. A sad, short smile, then turned away. At the time, I didn't understand why. No, I know. I also remember the look in her eyes on my birthday. We sat at a familiar cafe. Rachel gave me a notebook, brown leather cover engraved with my name. I asked why a notebook. She replied, "So you can write down things you shouldn't forget." At that time, I just smiled and put it aside. But that night, when I posted a story thanking Harry, Only tagged a few other friends. Forgetting about her the next day, Rachel was still talking normally, but I notice her eyes were red now. When I think back on those things, I don't just feel sorry, I feel selfish. I took all the love Rachel silently gave me, but never once stopped to ask, "Are you okay?" I took her presence for granted, but now that certainty was slowly disappearing and I was starting to feel the void it left. Lisa once asked me, "Do you think Rachel knows?" I shook my head Bethanously. I wasn't sure. Rachel wasn't stupid. She was perceptive. Observant, maybe. She had suspected, maybe she had sensed something had changed. It's just want to admit it, just like I didn't want to admit it. She's been in my heart somehow for a long time. I don't. Now if I love Rachel, but I know if there's one person in my life I shouldn't hurt, it's her. And I know I've started to do it even before anyone said anything. The last time I saw Rachel smile, I saw that her eyes weren't as innocent as before. Something was darker. If she was holding in a rain that hadn't fallen yet, and I was afraid that one day that rain would fall and I would. The one standing there without an umbrella. I went home that night, stretched out on my bed, the notebook Rachel had given me, still on the nightstand. I opened it. The first page was blank. I picked up a pen, wrote one line. Just one line. What you shouldn't forget: there was someone who loved you in silence. It was Wednesday. I remember it because it was drizzling enough to darken the sidewalks, but not enough to make anyone carry an umbrella. I was on my way home from school when I got a text from Rachel. "I'm cleaning out Mom's closet this afternoon and washing the blankets. Will you have dinner with me tonight?" I typed whatever and put my phone in my pocket. I glanced at that clock, 5:22 at that time. As usual, Lisa was home alone, and we were there too. A habit no one dared to name, but today Rachel came home early. I don't know exactly what happened in that house at that moment. I just replayed it over and over again, like trying to picture theme, and a heart was squeezed. Lisa's bedroom was usually neat. Rachel went in there with the intention of folding a pile of sweaters she had left on the chair. She put the bag of clothes on the bed, bent down to pull open the drawer near the bedside table. Then she saw the box, a small unlocked box set against Thule, as if it had been hidden carelessly, not really meant to be discovered, but not carefully enough to prevent someone from finding it. Rachel opened it. Inside were a few condoms left in their blister packs, and a few used packs neatly folded in their paper sleeves that might not have bothered her if it hadn't been for the second thing, a black t-shirt neatly folded, placed just below it. That shirt Rachel and I had picked it out together at the mall last summer. She was the one who said it looked good on me. The one who paid for it first, even though I hadn't had time to take out my wallet. The one who first called me jokingly, "It's my boyfriend's, keep it safe." Rachel picked up the shirt slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. The light from the window slanted through her Hermabe. At that moment she couldn't believe it. Maybe she was still searching for an explanation, a rational reason why the shirt was here in her mother's room next to something it shouldn't be. But all that theory collapsed when Rochelle opened the bottom drawer. A familiar scent rushed out, the detergent she'd smelled on my shirt a few times recently. At that moment I thought she hadn't cried yet. Rachel wasn't the type to cry right away. She was the type to endure, and then when she couldn't bear it any longer, the tears would fall silently without a single sob. And I knew that most painful kind of crying. Rachel stood there for a long time. No one knew exactly how long, maybe only a few minutes, but in those minutes, a part of her changed forever. She was no longer the girl who laughed at my nonsense, no longer the best friend who waited for me outside the library door. Come rain or shine, in that moment, Rachel became someone who was facing the deepest betrayal a heart could endure, and it came from the two people she trusted the most. She put the shirt back. She closed the drawer. She pushed the box back into place. Everything looked as if it had never been touched, but Rachel's eyes were different. There was nothing to hide. What it just happened in her head. As she stepped out of the room, Rachel heard a small laugh from the living room, from the second floor balcony. Not loud, not clear, but enough to make you stop. She leaned over and looked down. Lisa and I had just entered the house. I was still holding a paper bag, and inside was Lisa's favorite cake. We didn't know Rachel was back. She'd said she'd be in the library until the evening, and as usual, we let ourselves go unguarded, as if our secret was a given. Rachel stood
Les.
There, looking down, she saw him bend down to take off my shoes. Saw Lisa step closer to me, smiling softly. Saw her hands on my shoulders, familiar, and then that brief touch became undeniable living proof. I turned. Abuto say something when my eyes met Rachel standing on the stairs, light from the door. Behind her, framing her in a brilliant, beautiful, painful silence. Lisa stopped to the space for Zia's. If time had been compressed into a single look, no one said anything. Rachel walked down the stairs. Slowly, each step seemed to bring 1,000 questions, accusations, and pain boiling under the surface. She stopped. 3 steps away from us, looking at them, both. No screaming, no crying, no shaking. Her voice was low, soft, almost a whisper. You two killed everyone. I didn't have time to say anything. Neither did Lisa. Rachel passed us like a cold wind. No turning, no breaking. But that silence was the loudest bang. I don't remember what I was thinking when Rachel said, "You two killed everyone," and left quietly. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room. Lisa didn't either. We didn't look at each other. We didn't call out to her. Everything felt broken, but there was no sound. I heard Rachel's door close above me, not loudly, not dramatically, but in my head. It resonated like a hammer hitting the softest part of my heart. Lisa sat down on the chair, her hands shaking slightly, but she didn't cry. She just raised her hand to her forehead, as if trying to sort out the emotions that were spilling out of her. Self-control. I stood in the middle of the room. I didn't know whether to stay or go. The house suddenly felt cramped, not because of space, but because of the look. Rachel left. The look made me feel like a stranger invading the place I should have cherished the most. Josh. Lisa spoke. Her voice was small. I didn't turn around. I'm sorry. She continued, but couldn't say anything more. The apology hung in the air, unable to find a place to land. I exhaled a long breath. Mimand was spinning. Everything came back to me like fragments of a film. Rachel sighs on the stairs, the t-shirt in the drawer, the furtive touches between me and Lisa, and my own laughter, which had sounded just a few minutes ago down the hole, the exact moment Rachel stepped out of the darkness. Of trust, I used to think that when I was discovered, I would be afraid. But no, the feeling at that moment wasn't fear. It was loss, an irreparable bliss, because I knew from the moment Rachel's eyes met mine that day, everything between us was dead. I went upstairs. I stood in front of Rachel's door. I didn't knock. I just stood. Sturmy hand touched the cold door. I wanted to call her name, but my throat felt blocked. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned away.
Ow.
I left the house, saying the sunless afternoon. The sky was gray, the wind was cold, as if the very air itself were complicit in my emptiness. I didn't say goodbye, didn't slam the door, just walked. Each step felt heavier with the things I couldn't take with me. Faith of friendship, the best part of myself. I don't know how long Lisa stayed in the living room after that, but I imagined that she would sit still, not turning on the lights. The room would darken as the light outside faded. Maybe she had the TV on but didn't pay attention. Maybe she heard noises upstairs, Rachel's footsteps, the water running in the sink, but didn't dare say anything. Lisa was a woman of experience, had lost so much: a marriage, a belief in love, and now her own hands were helping to push away the last thing. She should have kept her daughter, I imagined. Lisa sitting there, her eyes staring blankly down at my hands. Maybe for the first time in all, she hated herself. And I knew I had started hating myself since Rachel came down the stairs in the room. Upstairs, Rachel sat on the bed, her back against the wall. Her eyes were dry. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. In her hand was the black t-shirt I used to wear. She held it tightly to her chest, as if she were holding on to an old memory that had been crushed in just one afternoon. On the desk, the notebook I had given her for her birthday was still there, open to the first page. My handwriting was already smudged with tears. Thank you for always being there for me, even though there was nothing special now. There was that nothing wastes most special thing, the thing I no longer deserved. Rachel stood up. She went to the bookcase, silently taking out the family photo album. Flipping through a few pages, she stopped at the picture of the 3 of us, her, Lisa, and me, taken a tour high school graduation. In the photo, our eyes were all on the camera. The smiles were not forced, natural, relieved, as if no one thought that one day everything would change so much. We used to be people who were connected not by promises but by habits, trust, and a sense of security, but it was those nameless things when betrayed that cut the deepest that night. I didn't text Rachel, didn't call Lisa either. I sat in the car in the school parking lot, looking out at the foggy space alone, a familiar feeling because I used to like being alone, but today this wasn't a chosen loneliness. This was the loneliness that came from losing. I used to think that a mistake could be fixed with an apology, but not every mistake has a chance to be fixed. There are cracks once formed that will always be there as a reminder how much pain. I used to cause others to stop going to Rachel's house, not because we said anything to break things off, but because after that fateful day boat when me and her there's nothing left to say, nothing left to say. I didn't text. I don't either. Neither did anyone block the other. No reproaches, no blucks, no unfollows. We still existed on each other's social media, like two shadows that used to be familiar, now strangers, but in real life, all the connections had been silently removed. Lisa didn't call either. I knew she might be waiting for a message from me, or maybe she hoped I would stay silent. Saw that everything would settle like sand after a wave. Either way, I didn't contact her, not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to say anymore every day that passed. I lived like a living corpse. I still went to class, still did my homework, still smiled faintly when my friends told nonsense stories, but he wasn't really there. I was like a person standing behind glass, watching my own life pass by without feeling touched on more. Sometimes I passed by the bookstore where I had picked up Rachel's birthday notebook. Her name popped into me head like a familiar scratch. Not bloody, but still making me wee-see. I didn't stop, just walked by, but once I saw a girl sitting near the glass door. Her head tilted to read a book. Her back looked like Rachel's. Her hair was almost the same. I stood there, my heart clenched for a few seconds, but when the girl turned around, it wasn't her, and I didn't know if I felt disappointed or relieved. A week later, I heard that Rachel had moved out of Lisa's house. She had gone to live with a rant in the suburbs, 2 hours away. I didn't know if she had left that day, or if she had planned it. I didn't know what she left for Lisa, or what she said before she left all. I knew is that she had chosen to leave everything, including me. People don't have to leave in anger. They just have to be quiet and not come back. That's enough for me to know I've lost them. I don't blame Rachel for breaking up. I don't blame Lisa for not holding on. I just see things falling apart without anyone doing anything to hold them together, and that leaves me feeling emptier than any criticism. I heard that Lisa still lives in the old house she still keeps. Decent routine, drinking tea in the morning, watering the plants in the afternoon occasionally, calling a plumber or changing a light bulb, but there is one small change. She no longer opens the door for anyone to enter as easily as before. No more smell of cookies baking every afternoon. No more soft jazz music playing from the living room speakers. And absolutely no trace of me in that house. It is as if Lisa has wiped away all the evidence herself, but cannot wipe away the feeling that lingers on her fingers. Every time she touches the familiar doorknob, a neighbor told me one morning she stood in front of the mirror in the living room for a long time, no hair, no makeup, just standing still, looking at herself. A 45-year-old woman who used to be attractive, strong, confident, now sees in the mirror slightly blank face, sunken eyes, no lipstick, and an unknown gaze. I imagine what she was thinking at that moment. Maybe she was thinking about Rachel, her only daughter. Maybe she was thinking about me, or maybe she wasn't thinking about anything, just trying to hear if her conscience was still talking to her. I was different. I didn't go near Thought House anymore, but it was always in my head like a frozen scene every time. Thought about it, every image appeared clearly. The stairs where Rachel stood, the light shining through, the curtains, broken laughter, in the room where no one wanted to stay. My life went on, but since that day, I was no longer the same person I used to be. There was a part of me that was broken, not completely noticeably seen, but really broken. I started to be afraid to make promises, afraid to create trust, afraid to get too close to anyone, for fear that one day I would hurt that person like I had hurt Rachel one time. I sat down to write an email to apologize, intending to send it to her, but every time I got to the third line, my hands stopped. I didn't know where to start, and most of all, I didn't know if Estelle had the right to say anything to her. Not all mistakes need to be forgiven, some mistakes. The sentence is that we have to live with them forever. I met Lisa only once. By chance at the supermarket near the school, she washing apples. I walked past, our eyes met very quickly, neither of us said anything. I just nodded slightly, and she paused. Her lips, her eyes were moist, as if she had just emerged from an unfinished dream. No one stopped. There was no need. Everyone has a moment in their life. When everything is no longer the same for me, that moment was at the window of Rachel's house, where her eyes met mine for the last time, quietly without anger, but enough for me to know what I lost could not be found again. From that day on, I no longer looked at the world with the same eyes. The relationships around me, the girls I met, I always kept an invisible distance. It was as if there was a new boundary within me, not to protect myself, but to avoid hurting anyone again. I used to dream that one day I would accidentally meet Rachel again. Maybe at an exhibition or a familiar coffee shop. She would smile. I would hesitate. We would both be a little awkward, then share a few polite words maybe. Then everything would disappear, like smoke or something. It would start again slowly, cautiously, but that was just imagination, in fact, since the day she left. Rachel has never returned, not a message, not a trace. She disappeared from my life, like people close a chapter in a book, gently but firmly. And I understand there are people who only come into your life to remind you that you once had a chance and lost it. I still keep a few small things: the notebook she gave me, the photo of the three of us together, the note with my final year wishes, each item. It's like a gentle reminder that everything that used to be was real, and now it belongs to the past. Memories don't die. They just learn to stay in a drawer that you don't open every day. I don't blame Rachel. 40 Sappering, if I were her, I would also choose to leave, because I understand loving someone is not as bad as finding out that they used to love your own mother. Once I happened to read a sentence in an old book: love doesn't always end with no more love. Sometimes it ends with a silence that no one duress to touch. I closed the book and thought, it's true, between Rachel and me, there was never a word of goodbye. There was never a word of love either, but between what we've been through, perhaps there's no need, because that silence makes everything deeper, more painful, like a song that doesn't need a melody, but still makes people cry. Lisa is no longer in my life. I don't know if she tried to contact Rachel again. I don't know if she still kept that thin silk nightgown from that year. I don't know if she ever lay alone, looked up at the ceiling, and asked herself, if only I had stopped sooner. I also don't know if time could have turned back. Would I have stopped, had enough courage to pull my hand away from temptation, be sober enough to see Rachel with different eyes, or I will still slide down like I did. A part of me wants to go back and fix it, but the other part knows making mistakes is what makes you grow. I don't think I'm a bad person, Booty. No, I did wrong. And sometimes to move on, one doesn't need forgiveness. Just dare to admit what you've lost and learn to carry it with you for the rest of your life. One night I sat on the balcony of my dorm. It was cold. A few kids were laughing in the yard. The yellow light shining through the light mist. I opened the notebook Rachel had given me. Flipping to the last page, I wrote, Aline, don't know what will happen next. I just know none of us will be the same people anymore. Maybe that's how some stories end, without fanfare, without conclusion. No one was completely right and no one was completely wrong. It just happened. And from that day on, each of us carries a scar, still there, but never fading. That was the day I lost not just Rachel, but the best part of myself. Thank you for listening to me tell this story to the end. I don't know what you think. Off me, maybe you hate me, maybe you pity me, or maybe you find some familiarity in this story. I'm not telling this to be forgiven. I'm telling this because I need some yon to know that someone like me once hurt the person I should have loved the most. See you in the next.